Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Phil Wegmann, White House reporter for RCP, and I'm joined now by South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace, who has introduced a resolution that would require members of Congress to use the restrooms and facilities that correspond with their biological sex. The resolution comes as Rep-elect Sarah McBride, a Democrat from Delaware, prepares to take office as the first transgender member of Congress. Congresswoman, let's dive in. McBride has called this a manufactured culture war and a distraction, but you've drawn a line in the sand. Why?
Well, because this isn't manufactured. Like, this is real. It's on the front doorstep. And look, let me just say right off the bat, I am very much a civil rights, civil liberties person. I voted for gay marriage, not once, but twice. I have voted for protections and legislation to protect LGBTQ individuals. Okay. But I, as a woman, draw a line in the sand about biological men who want to force their genitalia, their penises, their junk into our private spaces. And I'm a survivor of rape. I was raped at the age of 16, but also, not just the sexual violence I've endured, but I've endured sexual abuse, and I have PTSD from that abuse. And just the idea that a man would force himself into our dressing rooms or in our locker rooms or in the stall next to me and his junk. It's an assault on women. And I know how vulnerable women and girls are based on my own personal experiences. And this is a big fat red line in the sand for me. I mean, you can only go so far, and I'm not going to strip women's rights away from 1/2% of the country. At some point, you have to say no more. Like, it's just not okay. And, we saw the video, for example, earlier this year of Planet Fitness in Alaska. Here was a middle-aged man with a beard, with boxers, with his willy-nilly, dancing around, prancing around in a locker room. In the corner of that photo was a 12-year-old girl in a towel naked. I mean, it's not okay. And I just really, I'm so passionate. I mean, I was the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina. I know how hard women have fought for our achievements and our successes, and I'm not going to allow it to be stripped away by a man or any man.
And we've seen this come to the fore. I mean, Republicans campaigned on this issue. I'm thinking of President-elect Trump's campaign ads where he told voters that Harris was for they, them. And yet some of your colleagues seem to be
Mhm.
running away from this issue on the Hill. For instance, what do you make of Representative Tom Cole, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, telling reporters yesterday that he was trying to, quote, avoid the great bathroom debate?
Well, I'm going to put all of my male colleagues on notice. Like, I want you on record. I want to know if you respect the dignity of your female colleagues. Do women on the Hill have rights, or do we not? Are you going to force this down our throats, or are you going to respect us and respect our rights as women? We are colleagues, and this is something that is going to affect us, not them. It doesn't affect my male colleagues. It affects the women who are here. And there are a number of us on the Hill, not just members of Congress, but there are female employees and staffers who are also survivors of assault, who are survivors of sexual violence. And just the idea of a man and his genitals being in our private spaces is just absurd. And it just makes us as women more vulnerable.
Let me ask you this then. If Republicans sidestep this issue with Representative McBride, do you think they were ever serious about all of those press releases and messaging bills that they put out on girls' sports? Do you see this current debate as a litmus test for the larger issue that you've been talking about?
Well, I will tell you, I'm going to force the issue. I mean, I don't make threats. I make promises. I will force a vote on this if I have to. And there's several different ways to go about doing that procedurally. And we've been talking to and working with the parliamentarian on that. This is a real issue. And I'm not just going to stop on Capitol Hill. I've heard from a lot of people around the country, a lot of women who are saying, what about us? It's not just on the Capitol. It's at our schools. It's at institutions of higher learning. It's in my office building. And so I filed a bill this morning that would extend the same protections for women across the country on all federal property. And then I'm working on another piece of legislation that if you get any federal funding, then it's going to apply to you too. And so we have to put our money where our mouth is. And inflation and spending was on the ballot in November. Illegal immigration was, but so too were women's issues.
Mhm.
And so what are we going to do to protect women? This is a real issue. It's really happening. It's not fake. It's not manufactured. It's on our front doorstep. And at some point, we have to affirm women's rights.
That's a perfect segue to some of the pushback. I mean, for instance,
Mhm.
on the flip side of this they, them binary that the president-elect seemed to set up, implying that Democrats were more concerned with a particular slice of the electorate than Americans overall. You have some Democrats now, like Kate Bedingfield, the former
Mhm.
White House comms director, saying on CNN yesterday that in a way you're guilty of doing what Trump accused Democrats of, that you're zeroing in on a specific issue that affects a single member of Congress rather than those challenges that you mentioned a second ago, like immigration, like inflation. What's your response to that criticism?
It's the height of gaslighting. And I'm sick and tired of being gaslit over normalcy, over common sense. This affects every single woman and every single girl across the country. And the issue isn't getting better, it's getting worse. We're being force fed an ideology that is not based on science. And women are vulnerable. They are extremely vulnerable, particularly in places where they believe they have the right to privacy. And we have the right to privacy in our bathrooms, in our dressing rooms, in our locker rooms. And at the end of the day, women's rights are human rights. And are we going to pick up the mantle and say, yes, you are worth fighting for? Your rights will be protected. And if I'm going to be the lone wolf on this, if I'm going to be the only one in the country standing up for women everywhere, I will carry that mantle. I will take all the arrows. I will take all the attacks, the name calling, the death threats on my life. I mean, there are literally men right now in dresses who want to kill me because I want to protect women's private spaces.
I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the pushback that you've received here in a moment. But before we get there, take us behind the scenes of the GOP conference doors. I mean, have
Mhm.
you discussed this issue with Speaker Johnson, and are you open to any kind of compromise? Yesterday, at first, he said that this was a silly debate, and later he clarified that a man cannot become a woman, but there wasn't any clear direction, it seemed, from his press conferences.
It did come up at our conference meeting yesterday, and I spoke to Speaker Johnson multiple times earlier this week about this, and he assured me that it would be in the House rules package. Now, if it's not in the House rules package, then I will produce an amendment and request a vote on adding it into the House rules package. And if that doesn't work, then I will absolutely 100% guarantee you, promise, I don't make threats, make promises. I will file a privileged motion and force a vote on this issue. I want to know where my colleagues stand on women's rights. Do you respect us? Do you respect our dignity? Do we have rights or not? And this is a litmus test for every woman across the country. And look, I've heard from a lot of friends of mine, lesbian couples, gay friends, Democrats, everyone I've heard from, whether you're independent, Democrat, left of center, moderate, or obviously conservatives are with me, but everyone I've talked to across the political spectrum, except for the raging radical left, like they're with me on this and they're encouraging me to continue the fight. And I'm appreciative of the support because there's a lot of political diversity in our country, but this is a place where most of us agree.
I want to ask you about something that I've noticed in your gaggles and remarks with reporters. It's a
Mhm.
small thing, but during your remarks yesterday's, for instance, when you were referring to Representative-elect McBride, you used the representative's preferred pronouns. You called the representative she. Was that an intentional distinction?
I've used both. I've used he and she. I've used a mix. I've used both. I'm not going to submit to the pressure. I'm not going to submit to the threats. The idea that he would force himself into our private spaces is just off the rails to me. Um, I do my best to be respectful, but this is a place where I just will not. I will not accept the absurd idea that a man can force his penis into our private spaces. It's just not ever going to be, not going to be there on that.
Normally these debates happen and there's a lot of name calling back and forth, but a
Mhm.
moment ago you mentioned some of the death threats that you've received
Yeah.
as a result of this resolution. And there's even video that we have seen of some individuals making threats on your life. So has the House Sergeant of Arms been made aware of these threats? And is there anything you can say about any additional precautions you might be taking?
Yes, so I actually spoke to Capitol Police this morning, and my office staff was in communication reporting these threats. I'm getting threats via direct message. I'm getting them via phone messages, phone calls, email, all those sorts of things. On social media, we post an example because mainstream media was like, show proof of the threat. We did, and then it was crickets, right? But we have reported the threats really started to dial up yesterday, and so I spoke with Capitol Police this morning, and I will do what I have to protect myself and my family. I take the safety of my family very seriously. This is not the first time I have been threatened, but I will tell you, it's been the most, I think, violent rhetoric publicly that I've ever seen in my life. Like it just the using knife imagery to say that I should prepare to die. I mean, I can't. It's just it's wild. It's wild to me. And this is I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to be bullied. People forget like they don't know my history. I'm a high school dropout. I was the first. I eventually made it to college where I made history. I was the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina. I have broken glass ceilings my entire life. In fact, I'm the first Republican woman elected to the US House from my home state of South Carolina ever in its history. And so, I've been celebrated as a feminist and someone who's, broken glass ceilings for women. And it's the time that I say, hey, is now. I'm going to fight for women's rights and continue this battle. They're threatening to kill me because I don't want penises in my locker room. I don't want men watching me change. It's insane to me. It's not normal. It's not normal. That's not where most people are.
Well, we will have to leave it there. Congresswoman, thank you very much for joining us. I'm
Thank you.
Philip Wegmann. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM, and we will be right back after this.